What's up, Arc Junkies? Welcome to show number 281. You know, I had an awesome guest lined up for this week, but unfortunately, he got sick. And I've been tangled up in a busy schedule of setting up the new school and managing inspections and certification work, making it a bit challenging to reschedule the guest or find a quick replacement due to the tight timelines. But I didn't want to leave y'all hanging, so today I'm flying solo to make sure you're not left without an episode for the week. I've had a burning topic in the back of my mind for the past couple of weeks, and it's time to get this out to the masses. I know many of you listeners out there are the very backbone of the welding world, the instructors, the students, the potential mentors, or maybe you're part of a local advisory board at a local welding school. So this topic is probably going to strike a chord. We're going to discuss a trend that's sending shockwaves through our community. Educators from all over the U.S. are packing up their tools and returning to the industry. Before we dive into this issue, a quick word from the folks who help keep the lights on at the BuzzBox Studios. Today's episode of the Arc Junkies Podcast is brought to you by Outlaw Leather in Pasadena, Texas. Outlaw is family-owned and operated and makes the coolest custom hoods in the game. There's a lot of copycats out there making custom hoods, but unlike other custom hood makers, Outlaw puts your safety up front. That's why their hoods are designed and built to meet ANSI Z87.1 and CSA Z94.3 requirements. Get the look you want and the quality you expect from Outlaw Leather. Each piece is hand-built in their facility in Pasadena, Texas. In addition to custom hoods, Outlaw makes custom arm pads, bolt bags, belts, scabbards, and more. They also carry everything you need to tackle your current or your next job, like welding consumables, hand and power tools, welding rods, and more. Can't make it to the storefront location? No problem. Hit them up at outlawleather.com and shop from the comfort of your home and get fast, easy shipping on all your orders. And as a special bonus for listeners of the Arc Junkies podcast, you can save 15% on all in-stock handmade leather goods when you use Arc Junkies in the discount box at checkout. That's outlawleather.com. We're also brought to you by Rockmount Research and Alloys. Rockmount carries all the goodies to tackle all of your maintenance welding needs and get the job done right the first time, every time. Rockmount has a rod and wire for every type of maintenance welding that you're doing. Whether it's hard facing, repairing a cracked excavator arm, welding on skid plates, brazing on fittings, or welding to similar alloys, Rockmount has what you need. Check out their full line of products at rockmountwelding.com. Got a repair that keeps failing and don't know what to do? Not a problem. Just call up the Rockmount technical team at 1-800-272-7637 and they'll help to develop a solution. We all know downtime is the Achilles heel when it comes to equipment. Get your machines back to making you money with a quality repair with Rockmount. Their rods are specifically designed to help you weld stronger so your equipment can last longer. And as a listener of the Arc Junkies podcast, you can get a free 1-pound tube of Tartan AAA when you spend at least $250 at rockmountwelding.com by using AJP in the discount box at checkout. Get the job done right the first time, every time with Rockmount. We're also brought to you by Underground Metalworks. Are you looking to learn how to weld but don't have the time to commit to a 6-month program? Then check out Underground Metalworks in Orlando, Florida. We have a program to fit every schedule. We're offering week-long comprehensive classes, nighttime sessions, weekend MIG and weekend TIG classes, as well as custom one-on-one training classes. The training center opens July 17th and kicks off with a full week of comprehensive classes taught by yours truly. Classes are filling up quick, so make sure to secure your spot by going to underground-metalworks.com or by clicking on the link in the show notes. All right, you know what time it is. Fire up your machine, drop your hood, and turn me up 5.
You're listening to the Arc Junkies Podcast, helping you make every weld better than your last with each episode. And now your host, Jason Becker.
All right, everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of the Arc Junkies Podcast, where we talk about everything and anything related to the welding industry. I'm your host, Jason Becker, and today we're going to dive headfirst into a brewing crisis that's shaking up the educational sector of the welding industry. A bunch of experienced welding instructors are leaving the classroom and heading back into the industry. This may just be the tip of the iceberg, but it gives me a chance to reflect on what's currently happening in many schools around the U.S. Just this past week, I've heard of 3 different instructors leaving welding education, and I know of at least 5 more that are planning to do the same thing in the next couple of months. Now, I'm not going to give out anybody's name because maybe they don't want this information out there yet. A couple of them you can actually find on Instagram. They've already basically submitted their resignation to their company and, made an Instagram reel about it. So, you can find them if you're looking for them. The reasons they're leaving are varied, but seem to stem from some fundamental issues. They range from inadequate pay to problems with administration policy, lack of resources, and an overwhelming emphasis of quantity over quality. So let's break it down. First up, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the pay. It's a harsh reality that many of our educators, particularly in vocational fields, are underpaid for the amount of work and dedication they put into their craft. In fact, some of the welding instructors see their students graduating and stepping right into jobs that pay more than what the school is currently paying the instructor. It's hard to incentivize teachers to stay in education when the industry is just waving a way more attractive paycheck. I can totally relate to this. I left the Ironworkers Union back in 2014 to get into welding education, and for the first 2 years of my teaching journey, I struggled to pay my bills. I'm not sure if I've shared this fact on the show before, but during that time, I had to go to a payday advance company called Amscott just to make ends meet. I was also selling a lot of my tools on Craigslist and at a local pawn shop just so I could continue to pay my bills while I was teaching. I was making a lot less at the school than I was originally told I'd be making. I was told that for a full-time position, I was going to be getting $36.50 an hour, which I thought was great money compared to what I was making as an iron worker. Well, only half of that was true. I was making $36.50 an hour, but what they considered full-time was a 28-hour work week, and it didn't come with any health insurance or benefits. So the math ended up working out to be way less than I was making when I was with the ironworkers. I was getting ready to walk out of education and go back to my tools and get back to slinging iron, but morally I couldn't bring myself to walk out on my students and abandon them in the middle of a class. These young men and women were relying on me to teach them what I knew so that they could learn a skill to advance them in life, so that they could better themselves and their situations, and so that they could provide for themselves and their families and give them a better life. That's when I started my mobile welding business. I could actually make more money in a single weekend than I could at this school for the entire month. But the work was feast or famine. It's like that in construction. Those of you that are working in construction or have worked in construction, you know that. The work's not always there. And there were certain times that the work wasn't there for me. And it also didn't provide any insurance for myself or my family. So I decided to stick it out. One class turned into two, and right after my second class was ending, I got another offer from a school that was a full-time position. It had a competitive starting salary and full benefits. I couldn't pass up the offer, so after I graduated my second class, I went ahead and resigned and started working for the other school. Now, I absolutely loved teaching welding. Watching students come in with basic to absolutely no skill or knowledge about this industry and working with them for about 6 months and watching them graduate with industry-recognized certs and get employed right out of school into a high-paying career was an amazing journey. I tell you this to say that I completely understand what these instructors are going through. It's rough. On one hand, you love the work and watching these young men and women become awesome welders, but on the other hand, you're hardly making ends meet. And it's not just welding instructors, obviously. It's teachers in general. And, that goes from kindergarten all the way up through high school and trade schools. But for the sake of this episode, I want to keep the focus on welding educators for obvious reasons. One of the instructors I'm talking about said, "It's a difficult position to be in. Seeing my students, whom I've trained, earning more money than me right out of school, it's great for them, but it puts me in a tight spot." I told him that I completely understand, and at the end of the day, you have to do what's right for you and your family. I remember when I used to take my students on field trips or shop tours, and the shop foreman or the supervisor would always pull me aside at some point and offer me a position in the company. The pay was always way more than I was making at the school, but I felt I could have a bigger impact training many students to go into the industry than working for one company and training a few. So that's why I decided to stick with education. In addition to the pay, there's also a growing concern about administrative policies in our educational institutions. On one hand, some instructors feel that the administration is too restrictive and that they limit what they can and can't teach. On the other hand, some instructors believe that there's too much leniency on important policies like grades and attendance, which effectively lowers the bar for graduation. When I taught my students, I told them up front, this program is a filter, not a pump, meaning not everybody's going to make it. I was strict on attendance and punctuality because I knew industry doesn't put up with people being late and no calls and no shows. If my students pulled those stunts in class without repercussion, you can make damn sure they're going to try to pull the same stunts at work and lose their job over it. One of my instructors I was talking to said, "We're training the next generation of welders. They need to know the hard truths of the industry, the standards and expectations. But it feels like the administration wants us to make it easier, which doesn't do our students any favors in the real world." And he's absolutely right. Many of the students have never had a real job, or a job at all for that matter. Things are different now. I had my first job at age 15, and prior to that, I learned the importance of hard work and work ethics by working on my uncle's farm baling hay over the summers using Clydesdale horses to pull sickle mowers, balers, and wagons. It was backbreaking work for an 11-year-old kid, but I loved the work. Most kids today, they've never had to do a physical job. They've never had to learn hard work or work ethics. So while they're attending welding school, they need to learn what's expected of them from industry. By laxing on these different standards and lowering the bar to graduate, you're only hurting the students in the future. They won't understand why they can't keep a job or get hired in the first place. We don't need to lower the bar of expectations. We need to challenge, foster, and help these students under our supervision to rise up and meet or exceed these expectations. And it works. I've seen it many times while I was in education. These young men and women want to be challenged. So challenge them and help them grow. Don't just hand out a certificate of completion as a participation trophy. This is a skill set. It's not a t-ball game. This is real life, and the expectations that you set at your institution are going to prepare those students for what's expected of them in industry. In addition to these laxed policies and requirements is the issue of class sizes. Many instructors feel like they're being expected to teach more students than they can safely or effectively handle. This not only impacts the quality of education, but also raises concerns about safety in a field like welding. Class sizes are a big issue, especially in a field where hands-on training is vital, and that makes up over 80% of the training requirements. Overcrowded classrooms are going to make it difficult to provide individual attention and maintain safety standards. The very first class that I ever taught, I had 9 students and I had 10 welding booths. It was perfect. I could spend a lot of time with each student every single day. Everyone was on track and they were all doing awesome. They all wanted to be there, and I had ample one-on-one time to help each student, especially the ones that struggled a little bit more than the others. It was great. We stayed up to date on the curriculum and even had extra time to fabricate miscellaneous projects for things we needed around the shop. Fast forward to my second class that I taught, I had the same 10 booths, but this time I had 25 students. With 25 students and 10 booths, I had to get creative. I had to split the students up into 3 groups, 2 groups of 10 and 1 group of 5. Group 1 would weld from 7 a.m. when we started till break time. Then Group 2 would weld from break time to lunch, and then Group 3 would weld from after lunch till it was time to clean up. This was a highly ineffective way to teach, but I had to work with what I was given. You see, when you have management and trade schools that have only ever been in academia, they feel that if a professor in humanities can teach a group of 25 students, so can a welding instructor. The problem is, the kids in the humanities class, they're not using 480-volt machines. They're not using 10,000-degree welding arcs. They're not using 40-ton sheet metal shears to complete their assignments. Welding students, however, are. Without adequate training, supervision, and one-on-one time with the instructor, someone's going to get hurt. Not to mention the fact that the students were paying 100% of the tuition and only getting about 33% of the hands-on time they were paying for. And lastly, there's the issue of budget and resources. In a practical field like welding, having the right tools, materials, and equipment is vital. Instructors feel stifled when the budget constraints prevent them from providing the best learning environment for their students. Teaching without the necessary resources is like trying to paint without a brush. Instructors can't adequately prepare their students for the industry without having the right tools. As I've said many times on this show, you can't make chicken soup from chicken shit. You need the right ingredients. I've talked to instructors whose annual budget for a class of 20-plus students is $3,000. How do you teach a full-scale welding class on $3,000? You have to beg, borrow, and steal at that point to get the materials and stuff you need to be an effective educator. I know several instructors who rely on donations from industry because they can't afford to buy steel for their welding students. That's a hell of a burden to put on someone. You wouldn't ask a math teacher to teach a class of 25 students with just a couple of textbooks and some broken calculators, but that's exactly what you're asking welding instructors to do. If you want a quality program and you want to produce a quality product, like a proficient welder, you have to invest in the program. I love what Joey Caruso is doing with the Hooded Heroes Foundation, but I wish it wasn't necessary. Schools should be providing all the PPE, consumables, filler metals, and equipment so that they can actually learn how to weld while they're in class. All these issues seem to boil down to a major conflict, the push for revenue and numbers versus the need for quality education and preparedness. It's a fine line to tread, and it appears that many instructors believe that their institutions are leaning too far towards the revenue side and missing the point of teaching a skilled trade altogether. But the instructors don't feel the same way. They want to make an impact in the lives of these students and give them 100% to prepare them to be productive members in our industry. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. This segment of the Arc Junkies Podcast is brought to you by Everlast Welders. Looking for a new welder or plasma cutter but don't want to break the bank doing it? Check out everlastwelders.com and get a quality machine at an affordable price and get peace of mind with your purchase from their 5-year warranty that comes standard on all Everlast IGBT inverters. They're currently running special pricing on the all-new Typhoon 230 and 330 stick and TIG machines with an all-new industry-first waveform to customize your aluminum TIG experience. Check them out today at everlastwelders.com and remember to use Arc Junkies in the comment section at checkout to get that free Nova foot pedal and TIG torch upgrade when you buy any machine that comes with a stock foot pedal. Everlast Welders. Weld mean, weld green. We're also brought to you by our friends over at Strong Hand Tools. They just put together some fantastic toolkits and tables that are on sale for a limited time. These kits include some of the most useful tools and tables you'll find around the shop, starting at 15% off with free shipping to the lower 48 in Canada. Check them out today at stronghandtools.com/promo. I've been using my Strong Hand table for the past 3 years and I love it. Just yesterday, I fabricated a custom sissy bar for a motorcycle and my Rhino cart came in clutch for the entire build. Get your table and fixturing tools today at stronghandtools.com/promo. Now let's get back to the show. Okay, so what can we do about all these skilled instructors leaving the classroom to go back into the welding industry? It's no small matter, and it's going to take some time and equally big solutions. But here's just a few approaches we could consider. First, let's tackle the pay disparity. It's challenging to retain quality educators when they can make significantly more money in the welding industry. I know the solution a lot of schools are turning to. When these quality welding instructors leave, they're hiring former students to fill these positions. Now that's a recipe for a disaster. In most cases, because the students only have lab and classroom experience. So that means they can't teach from actual real-world experience like the qualified educators can. So they're not able to prepare the students for a job that they've never done themselves. Sure, this approach might work in academia because it's all regurgitated theory. When I was working on my bachelor's in construction, I could tell right away which professors actually had field experience and which ones were just speaking out of a textbook. The ones that actually had the experience were the ones that got my respect and that I learned the most from, because they'd been there, they've done the work. They didn't just read about it in some textbook. One thing I think educational institutions could do for support is link up with their local government, industry, and local businesses. Schools need to strive to offer competitive salaries that reflect the expertise and dedication that these educators are bringing to the table. I remember during the pandemic when hospitals were screaming for nurses, they were paying ridiculous sign-on bonus and had very competitive salaries. Many of the educators in nursing left the school to get back into nursing full-time due to the highly competitive pay. Schools weren't able to offer a nursing program, and therefore they were losing tons of money in tuition. In response, the schools went ahead and increased their compensation packages for qualified instructors. We can do the same thing for all of our skilled trades programs. If schools want to retain quality instructors, you need to compensate them for their time and expertise. We need to rethink our funding models and our value metrics. Welding education isn't just a job. It's an investment in the future of the industry and our communities. We've all heard the numbers about the welder shortage. Currently, there's an estimated 360,000 qualified welders that are needed by 2027. Where the hell are we going to get that many skilled workers to keep our economy up and running if the students attending these welding programs aren't receiving a quality education from qualified instructors? And why would a qualified instructor take a job or stick around for subpar compensation? Then there's the issue of the administrative policies. Instructors need the freedom to teach what's necessary and relevant without unnecessary constraints, but also with an adherence to certain standards of expectations and performances from the students. Don't water down the standards. Help the students rise up to meet these expectations. They're going to be better off for it in the long run. Administrators need to understand they have hired a subject matter expert to teach welding. Administrators, listen to your instructors. They usually know what's best for their students and what the industry is expecting them to be able to do once they graduate and show up to work. Work with your instructors. Help them by supporting their decisions and listening to their concerns. Many times, our concerns fall on deaf ears because the people in charge of these programs, like welding, have little or no understanding of what's actually required to take someone with no skills and train them up well enough to enter the workforce and meet the minimum requirements in just 6 short months. As I mentioned earlier, many instructors are working with a shoestring budget, and with regard to resources, it's clear that more funding must be secured. One avenue that should be explored is applying for more grants from institutions like Perkins, AWS, and other sources that have available funds for welding programs. You can also lean on partnerships that you already have developed between your school and your industry partners. Many companies are throwing out tons of scrap metal and machines once they upgrade their facility. Reach out to them and see if they would like to donate to your program. Most of the companies that I was placing students with were more than happy to send us scrap metal, filler wire, and older machines. All we had to do was pick it up. And sometimes they were even kind enough to deliver it if we weren't able to pick it up. Welding students can't learn and they can't excel in schools without proper PPE and equipment. Leverage your resources to help fill that gap. Your local employers and companies want your students to succeed because they need to hire your students to keep up with production. Most of them are going to help you out. Start with the folks that are on your advisory board. They already have a vested interest in the success of your program and your students. And last but not least, there's the issue of class sizes. There's a couple ways we can handle this. If you want to hire former students, that's great. But hire them as a teaching assistant, not a welding instructor. They can be a second set of eyes to help out with safety as well as help struggling students with more one-on-one time in the booth. Another recommendation is to not take more students than you have equipment or booths for. It just puts more stress on the instructors and the student. You can also apply for the AWS Workforce Grant. It's specifically set up to help improve your facility and increase capacity to build additional booths and purchase capital equipment like welding machines, fume extractors, and other equipment. If you have a grant writing team at your school, have them get with your instructor and fill out the application. It's $25,000 you can use to expand your program. And if you're at high school, you can apply for the Light a Spark grant, which provides welding equipment and supplies to high schools to teach welding. Another thing you can do is look into virtual welders. I'm probably going to catch a lot of crap for this, but virtual welders actually work if you implement them correctly. Also, you have to understand that these virtual machines are a supplement to training, not an alternative. You can't train a bunch of students to be welders if they don't get enough actual arc-on time in the booth. But virtual machines can help save on shielding gas, coupons, and rods, and they help students work on fundamentals like work angle, travel speed, and position. But again, it's not an alternative, it's a supplement. I know several instructors, myself included, who have used virtual machines as a supplement, and they work great if you can get your instructors to buy in and actually use them. As much as I hate to see all these instructors leaving the education sector, I gotta say, I completely get it. I've been there myself. Most people don't quit their jobs, they quit their managers. There's a reason private schools like Precision Welding Academy, Kentucky Welding Institute, and American Welding Labs are out there killing it. All these schools are ran by welders to teach welding. Administrators, you need to listen to your instructors and your advisory boards. Increase your compensation, reduce your class sizes, and fund your programs if you want to retain your instructors and see your welding programs flourish. I can assure you that if you don't at least make an attempt, you'll continue to lose qualified instructors to the workforce. This is not only going to affect your school's performance, but it's going to affect your local industry and your community as well. That's pretty much all I've got for you this week. I know this episode isn't for everyone. I've been waiting to put it out there for a while now because I see a trend coming that no one is talking about. I believe this is going to be the next big thing, very similar to the current skills gap we're experiencing in the welding industry. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. I hope you all enjoyed this episode and you have a great rest of your week. Stay safe out there, and until next time, make every weld better than your last.